Hi, I'm Shannon Grissom. Are you looking to ignite your creativity? Or how about be inspired by a steady stream of muses? Welcome to Painterly Life, the podcast that celebrates those who create, inspire, and innovate. So, whether you're looking to spark your next big idea, reignite your passion, or simply soak in some creative energy, this is the place for you. Painterly Life, where every guest is a new muse just for you. Welcome to the Painterly Life podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Grissom. Today's guest is Ethan Cranke. Ethan is a visual storyteller and he's captivated by the alchemy of light. He crafts paintings that pull you in before you even know why. His paintings don't just ask to be seen, they demand to be felt. Welcome, Ethan.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Let's start at the beginning. What first drew you to painting? What pulled you in?
Well, when I was young, we'd go to the museums a lot in San Francisco. I have a lot of history there. My grandparents lived there. My great grandparents lived there. My uncle lived there. And so my mom, we'd go down and spend time in the city. Well, I was born there, and then when we moved out, we'd go down all the time. And I think well, there were a couple of. I'd always get lost in the classical paintings. I'd get lost in the formal structures, even before I understood what the story was or what the symbols meant. I was very interested in how those paintings arrested people, kept them in their still in their tracks, um, and I knew there was something there in the technique more so than in the story. I knew there was uh, something going on in how they structured the composition to keep people in the painting and not let their eyes wander off. I knew there was something there, and it was mastery of the visual language more so than the story. I think that pulled me in. Um, but then I have to be honest. I'm also a 20th century a kid of the 20th century. So and we'd go to the SF MoMA in the 80s when it was still at City Hall before they had the new building, and it was much smaller. And a lot of the paintings were in these tight little hallways, like they had a lot of Joan Moreau and Kandinsky and that kind of thing. And I wandered into this room that suddenly breathed and had a lot of space to it. And it was this room dedicated to just these giant, massive Clifford Still paintings. And I know that kind of art, a lot of the heroic modernist masters have kind of fallen out of fashion in a way, but I still have a weak spot for it. And I was just sitting there by myself looking at just these massive paintings that had no real narrative other than just a feeling. And it was like a religious experience, what a lot of people would consider a religious experience. And I was probably only 10, something like, and I think that was a big one for me, was just sitting there quietly. They had this nice bench just by myself in this room surrounded by these massive Clifford Still paintings on all sides. And there was just a depth, a real connection to another human being through them, just a universal oneness, whatever you want to say. It just all kind of rushed in. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I did know I wanted to do something like that I wanted to pursue whatever that feeling was. And and yeah, at first I did all sorts of crazy, flinging paint and crushing up chalk pastels and throwing the powder on the wet paint and doing all sorts of experimental things. And and I think that's a good place to start because you get familiar with the materials. You're not afraid to use the materials. It keeps you from being too timid with them. And so I think I always had that appreciation for the classical painters. I just didn't know how to tap into that. It was almost this unattainable thing to me when I was little. Like as far as their skill, the skill, I knew that I'd have to put in some time if I wanted to get to that point. Um, and so now after 30 years, I think I'm finally, uh, 30 years of doing this, more full time almost. I'm finally kind of hitting my stride as far as I don't really have any um, technical questions. It's more conceptual and compositional, that sort of thing. When you first start out, it's more like, how am I going to do this? And I'm kind of past the how-to point, and it's more, what am I going to do with this? I don't know if that makes
It does make sense. It does make
yeah.
sense. So you touched on, I'm thinking base, I'm going to back up in that the works that you saw in the hall, were they different than what you saw in the big room, or do you think it was the lack of space that you couldn't absorb them as well as you could the ones that were in the room?
I think that's part of it. Yeah, because I love Joan Moreau and Kandinsky and those guys. It's just they were these narrow halls, and you couldn't really stand back from the paintings very much. And I think I just naturally gravitated towards that room that is almost like an altar space or something, or just almost like a temple in a way that really allowed you to breathe so much more than those tight corridors. But then once I was in there, I'm like, what is this I'm looking at? And it really talked to me. It's just full of texture. And I mean, I later found out he was um the head of my art school back in the 50s. I didn't even know that at the time. It just happened that I went to the same art school that he was, but it was, and I found out those paintings he'd made in the basement of the San Francisco Art Institute, um, and just packed with emotion. He was a really sincere, earnest painter. Um, so I don't know. I think that uh, there is a there isn't all that much of a separation between the 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 old masters and the modern masters. I think that um, the end goal is the same, and that it all feeds on the same impulse, which is to stop the viewer in their tracks, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and to create this moment of, I guess, oneness with the universe,
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
however you want to see it.
It's that
Um,
connection. Yeah. You're totally dialed in, tuned in, one with everything. When you do it right, that's how it happens. And I think about your work, and you were talking about heroic modern masters. Both your whimsical work and your more classical work are of epic paintings. They both fall in that category. So I'm thinking about anticipation and endurance. Can you tell me how those evolved?
yeah, the resource material happened first. There was um, this captain who was known for getting drunk and running his ships aground, I guess. So this wasn't the first. This wasn't the first one, although this is the first one I got wind of early enough to actually go out and see it. And there's just something fascinating about a shipwreck that's run aground, a ship that's run aground. It has this element of mystery to it, an element of adventure, element of getting lost along the way, of human error, all that stuff. And so just the ship alone was pretty amazing with the ball of sun behind it, silhouetting it, and then there were these kids playing and running into the waves and running up to the ship, and they're playing tag and all sorts of things. And I started just taking photographs. I knew I wanted to do something with it. I didn't know what, but it was just this perfect moment in time that felt important and had a narrative element to it that I didn't know what it was. And I just started taking lots and lots of photos. and I didn't have my sketchbook with me, but I knew that I would use it. But then, yeah, I put it aside for a while, and I didn't quite know what I was going to use it for. I just knew this was some good stuff. And so in between that time and my building this studio, my original studio was flooded when the Russian River flooded last, and I rescued these panels before they were submerged, and a whole bunch of time passed because I had to build my new studio, which I'm in now, on higher ground. And I was looking at these panels. I build all my panels, so I wasn't just going to let them. I got to use these, you know. They're 4 feet by 5 foot wooden panels. I put a lot of effort into building them. They're monumental just as panels, and I was looking at the work that I had started on them, and I couldn't relate to it anymore because my head just wasn't in that same space after the flood and everything. Wherever I was going with that, I just wasn't there anymore. And I kind of decided to activate the surfaces basically by deconstructing them. You know, I took a palette knife and a couple of palette knives, and I just started scraping away excess texture, and then it started to reveal the layers of color. Like when you're a kid, I don't know if you ever melted a bunch of little crayon flakes, lots of little colored crayon flakes in between wax paper, you know, and then you paint over that with black. I mean, not paint, draw over that with black crayon, and then you can scrape away the black crayon and reveal the colors underneath with your scrapes. And it really had that feeling to it when I was doing that, and it just I started just having fun. And even though the scrapes might look to some people as like violent or something like that, it's not really what it was. I was just having fun like a kid with those scratching the black crayon off, and revealing different layers of color and how that makes certain patterns. And then I stepped back and I looked at it and I'm like, this looks a lot like a piece of a ship that washed ashore. Like it had that eroded vibe to it, like wood that had just deteriorated in salt water, left bits of paint here and there, and texture from the barnacles and the salt and all that stuff. And I was like, this is perfect. It just suddenly, it just hit me. Like I don't. It's sometimes these things are hard to explain, and sometimes that's where the best stuff happens. And I just dove into those resource materials that I'd taken, and I was removed from it enough that I was able to just appreciate the aesthetic of the resources without thinking about the specific time and place, and looking at it more from a universal themes, timeless themes, that sort of thing, and how it would apply to that. Because that's all the old masters did. You know, it's like they did a painting of Aesop. Well, that guy's not really Aesop. It's, you know, Velasquez's buddy who sat for him in a toga, you know. But it's still, but you know, people get so caught up in realism, and that's not really. It's more about creating a space, you know, and I think by having that time of separation, it allowed me to use the resource material in a way that I think is more powerful than if I'd done just a straightforward, like photorealistic painting of it or something, you know.
Well, and I also think that it's symbolically interesting how you rebuilt your studio on higher ground, and then you were able to take your work to from a different perspective, all at the same time, if that makes sense. So you're seeing it from a higher perspective, a more universal perspective. You know, the whole thing shifted from your original intent. I love how you just flowed with it and just kept expanding. I mean, that's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about back to the. I'm still taken by the heroic modern masters because I just see the epicness in those two pieces, and then also the heroism in your whimsical pieces. And talk to me about 100% kosher. That
Sure. I
there's
think
got
that
to be a story there.
there is. I think uh, I'm not a. I'm very. I come from a very secular background, but at the same time, I come from I guess what would be called an interfaith marriage, in that my mom was Jewish, is Jewish. Well, born into a Jewish family. My father was born into, I think they were kind of Presbyterian slash Lutheran, um, uh, and he was born in Minnesota. A lot of Lutherans there, and then they moved out here. But um, he and my mom kind of got more into Zen Buddhism during their hippie days and whatnot, and all sorts of other forms of spirituality and whatnot. And so I was raised to have a very open perspective on those things. But I still have that ethnically Jewish side to me, that because her side of the family was very big when I was a little kid. My grandmother had 6 brothers and sisters, so like we'd gather at at my grandparents' place, and it'd be packed with all these, the World War II generation, but they're all, it's kind of like hanging out with Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner, and I mean, there's definitely that side of Jewish humor side of me that looks at the irony of things, and so um, although I'm not, like I said, I identify with the culture and not so much with the
Okay.
religion, but so with, I think in that painting I'm trying to harness something that's in those religious paintings without the burden of the religion, in a way, and to bring in some of that Mel Brooks humor in a way. And so I'm thinking about, I honestly, I always call him Hercules just because I don't want to offend people. I don't ever say that it's who a lot of people assume it is. Um, I, but at the same time, it's a play on that, in that everything you see in there is technically 100% kosher. If you if you think of the history of that guy, and then also um, the pickle is a very the Jewish kosher pickle is kind of a very American part of our identity. I think Seth Rogen made a really funny movie about the Jewish pickle industry in America. But so the idea of him riding in on a pickle, surfing on a pickle, and in this kind of almost like an ad for pickles in a way, But it's more just a play on words. It's meant to be funny and ironic and silly, and not, definitely not meant to offend anybody, or anything like that. It's meant to just be fun, and to use those elements that we're used to uh, banging us over the head with something really heavy and serious, and turning it into something just fun and whimsical, and you know Mel Brooks basically.
Love Mel Brooks.
Yeah,
So what's your typical do you paint every day, and what's your typical painting session like?
I paint every day. At least I try to. There's things that come up. I have a lot of people that I care about, that I do things for and whatnot. But I try to paint every day if I can, unless something gets in the way. And so I do a lot of practical things just to get my mind in that state, to let go of anything outside of the studio that might get in the way of my thought process. So I'll start just by making sure all my tools are sharp. I'll scrape my palette if it needs scraping, and I'll put on. I listen to a lot of jazz, a lot of DJ sessions. Lately, I've been listening to a lot of DJ sessions on YouTube, because they'll be like 2 or 3 hours long, and it kind of forces me to be aware of the current sounds, that
Mm.
because I'm getting older, and so it's good to kind of force myself, to just kind of experience what the kids are listening to these days, and
Yeah.
just to stay current and whatever. And so I'll put on some music and I'll get my palette set up. That's a big part of it. I use a full spectrum, full chroma palette. But then on top of that, I'll try to think ahead as far as um, because I usually know what I'm going to paint that day. I usually know what painting I want to work on that day. I'll have multiple pieces going all at the same time, but I usually only work on one each day. Like I'll be in, sometimes it's for practical reasons. I'll be letting a layer dry on another one or something like that, or it's what I feel like working on. I know what I want to do with it, so I'll pre-mix some of my colors ahead of time. I'll try to think ahead as far as that way I can save time and I can be a little more efficient. So even though I have the full spectrum at the top that I can use for tinting, I try to pre-mix a good amount of the colors that I'm going to use for the day, whether it's abstract, flesh, or landscapes, or still life. It doesn't matter. I try to. It just makes it easier. It also puts me in that state of um, mind where I'm analyzing, breaking things down, into their most basic colors. So I'm already doing that on the palette before I even get in front of the painting, or I am in front of the painting, but I'm mainly looking at the palette. But then once I'm in front of the painting, I'm able to. It just helps me flow better, to have some of those premixes ready to go.
Yeah, if you get the logical stuff done first, for me, I feel like it. Then you get the nuts and bolts done first. Then when you actually go to paint, it's all in the intuitive mode. So
Exactly.
it's like you get your business done, and then whoosh, and
And you're less likely to, do something that might, because you already have created these colors that are part of the flow of the painting. You're less
yes,
likely to
yeah.
do something randomly and then regret it. you know.
Yes. Oh, yes. I'm like, yes. Yeah, I get that. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of like
Wow.
setting up the barrier, like those like at the bowling alley for kids, those things they put in the gutters so that they don't gutter ball. It's kind of like setting myself up for that, so I hit a strike every time, kind of, in a way.
Uh-huh. Well, it's a good way to do it. Okay, so if you could go back and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Um, don't worry about waiting your turn. That's a big one. I think I was a little too caught up in thinking that there was a hierarchy and that if you just stuck to it and waited your turn, that eventually you'd get in there or something. And that's just not how it works. And to just go for it, make the paintings that keep you up at night. Don't worry about taking risks. Just do it. And I think a really important one that has really helped me the last 10 years, I'd say, that I've really made an effort to do is to visualize. I'm a big believer in visualization. I mean, I think a lot of artists, we're visual thinkers, but I really try to visualize the space for that painting. So not just on any wall, but like, do I see it in a gallery? Do I see it in a museum? Do I see it in like a hotel lobby, at a home, in an office? What kind of home? What kind of office? Um, you know, so like sometimes I'll be working on a painting. I'm thinking to myself, this would be perfect in like a chrome glass New York loft kind of thing. Or sometimes I'm thinking this would be perfect in a nice cozy cottage in near where I live type of thing. Like the vacation rentals where people stay or anything like that. To just visualize the space, um, and how the painting as an object affects the space. So we get so caught up in in expressing our true idiosyncrasies and all that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think as professionals, it's really important to take it that next step and think about how this piece is going to affect any random person that walks into the room that it's in. I think that adds that level of professionalism. Um, where it's not, it is a form of self-expression, but you're also trying to create a moment for someone else. You know what I mean? Um,
I love that you have that connection part thought out, and that it's not just all about us. It's about the connection that we make with the work and that other side. So, what are you working on now? Where are you going?
I have this whole series in mind that I want to do. Um, it's more like using the figure as a formal structure for a painting to just create a feeling of motion, to just create a feeling, um, that's that's doesn't get trapped in a lot of the things that figure paintings get trapped into these days, as far as the male gaze and that kind of. I want to make figure paintings that just celebrate the form on an abstract level, the same way a ship or a gesture activates the surface. That's and creates something dynamic that just arrests you, pulls you out of normal time, and creates a space where you can just experience something in its pure form. You know, uh, I don't know if that makes.
Well,
Make it,
I think it's in line with everything you do. All of your work pulls you out of normal time and into someplace special. So it's just a different way of doing it, and you're by changing the concept of a of the figure. I'm totally having a brain fart.
perception or
Oh, um, context. So,
yes.
so I like doing abstraction simply by changing the context or by disassociation of the context, and so then that abstracts the work. So I see that you're doing that there, and so it is more about shapes and how things are flowing. So that's very cool. Do you have any shows coming up, or are you just doing more serious studio work right
Right now, I'm just doing the studio work. Um, I don't have any shows coming up that I'm booked for. I'm gonna keep trying for some. Um, I I I would like. I'm researching places. I feel like my shipwreck series didn't get the um, attention it deserved. I feel like there's something there that I think people can really experience and enjoy. I just need to get it out there, and um, it's easier to get the pop religious icon paintings into shows. Believe it or not, it's just I think people like fun and whimsy a lot more, and I think some people see the shipwreck paintings as too heavy or moody or something, even though that's not what I'm going for exactly. It's more about technique or the technical aspects of the surface. Um, but I really want to put together a proposal for a solo show or a duo show. There are a couple of spaces I have in mind. Um, I hear there's this space in San Francisco. They're converting. I think it's Pier 29. They're calling it the Pier 29 Art Space Project, and I'm thinking that'd be a perfect place because it's on the pier, it's on the docks, it's overlooking the bay, somewhere where I could. I'm thinking of putting a proposal together for them. Any other venue I can find, where I could show the Chipwreck series in its totality. Because they're like as you say, they're kind of epic paintings, and I feel like they deserve an epic space. Like a big space that will. Because yeah, the Pier 29, that's a giant warehouse type. They used to use it for merchant ships and that kind of thing. So it really has that feeling, just epic size, and and has all that history, maritime history, somewhere like that. I don't know if that's where I'm gonna be able to get it. Anywhere that I can get the proposal into, where they'll take me, pretty much. Um, but yeah, I think I'd like to put together a proposal for these. I think they deserve that. I'd like to give them where they can be seen, where the whole series can be seen together in one space. Uh, I think they hold their own on their own, but I think as a series, I think people will get it more. I think when people look at the individual paintings, they might see the moodiness or whatever that I keep getting as feedback. But I think when you see the whole thing, you realize this is actually kind of a technical feat that I'm going for. Um, it's. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just thinking that when you see the whole series, you understand everything about it, as opposed to one individual piece, because they are not isolated; they are all
Exactly.
connected. So, yeah, you'll get it. You'll get it. So, how can people find you online? What's your website?
EthanCranke.com, EthanCranke. A lot of people leave off the E, but it's EthanCranke.com. I'm also on Instagram, as well as Facebook. I'm thinking of getting back on TikTok. TikTok. Shows you how much I use it. I used it a while back and had some success. I just got so, they keep talking about shutting it down and all that, so I didn't know if I wanted to put much effort into a platform that might get shut down, but it seems like they're not going to shut it down. So I feel like I should do more on there. But I am active on Instagram and Facebook very much. Yeah.
I'll definitely put your links in the show notes so that people can find you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. You've been incredibly inspiring. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you. I hope I did okay. Hope I made sense.
You did. Well,
I really
thank you,
appreciate you having me. It's very
Oh,
kind of you to invite me. It's really nice to do it. It's really nice to be able to share these things when there's so many rare opportunities to do so, and mainly people just see the work and have no idea what's going on behind it. So I'm really grateful for this. I'd love to. I'm going to share it far and wide so people can,
yay.
you know,
Well,
hopefully,
I,
hopefully get a
I,
better idea of what I'm doing.
I really do. I want people to hear the stories behind the artists, and there's just so much more than what you see. There's just so much going on. So I'm glad I'm able to help. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in again. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and share so that I can make more of these. Thank you, Ethan. We will see you next time. That's a wrap.